Hey everybody, what is going on? You just saw the announcement from Sigma. We've had the lens in our hands for the past couple of weeks. The all-new Sigma 150 to 600 f5 to 6.3 DGDN for the L-mount Alliance, as well as the E-mount. Now, there is a separate video for you Sony users out there. But for those of you in the L-mount Alliance, Leica, Panasonic, Sigma, this video is for you. I've had the ability to try this lens on two cameras, the Sigma FPL as well as the Leica SL2. Big thanks to my friend Casey Ang for allowing me to use his SL2 for this review, and of course Sigma Singapore for providing the lens and the FPL. Having said that, we're not paid or sponsored for this. My thoughts only. Let's talk about how this lens performs on the L-mount cameras. We're going down a drop. Woo! This video is brought to you by Secret Lab. Here at Geek Culture, we love our Secret Lab chairs, especially the all-new 2022 Titan Evo with its revamped 4-way lumbar system for enhanced back support. If PU Leather 2.0 isn't your cup of tea, then consider the all-new Soft Weave, even more soft and breathable than before. The chair comes in more colors, including this lovely frost blue. The Titan Evo is even magnetized, allowing the head pillow to stick on the headrest without straps. Of course, there are even more new features, so do check them out at secretlab.co. All right, so let's talk about what is inside of this lens. You have 25 elements in 15 groups, 4 FLD elements, 2 SLD elements. The weight of this lens comes in at 2,100 grams or 74.1 ounces. The filter diameter on the front of this is 95 millimeters. And your minimal focusing distance at 150 is 58 centimeters, and at 600 it is 280 centimeters. So keep that in mind. Actually, it's pretty nice because if you really want to get close up on something, for a super zoom like this, actually does a really good job. Moving around the lens though, you're going to notice there are, of all the switches you need, it has optical stabilization inside of this. You do have your number 2, number 1 and off on that, your autofocus, manual focus switches. You can adjust the range of focus that it has from full 10 meters, etc., etc. Then you have your custom C2, C1 and off. The tripod ring is not removable, but you can actually turn it, and it actually has stopping points throughout the range, so you can adjust it to your liking, and then you just lock it down where you want it to stop. This is an Arca Swiss compatible tripod mount on this, so keep that in mind. And you can remove it for these 4 screws, but again, you cannot remove the entire ring. You do have these programmable buttons right here, these function buttons, so you can adjust whatever settings you'd like to that. Then you also have this new zoom torque switch to this. So this is new to the DGDM variant of this lens because you have lock, tension, and smooth. Basically lock, of course, locks the zoom. Tension makes it much more of a slower zoom out, and then smooth it makes it for fast action. Also, this is a dual action zoom, and this is nice because you actually can use your hand to just pull it out, or use the zoom ring. So as you're going to see, we'll walk around the zoo here. I'll be taking photos. A lot of the times I'll be using this to adjust really quickly versus using this ring and turning around. It just makes capturing subjects a lot easier and a lot faster. But besides that, this is splash and dust resistant. It has oil repellent coating on the front of the lens. This is a really robust lens. I mean, this is a sports lineup from Sigma. So even from their previous versions, from the sports line from Sigma, we knew that those lenses were built and designed for professionals. You're getting that same quality in this DGDN variant on it, except it's a little bit more compact and it is L-mount native to this. So anyway, yeah, it looks beautiful here on the SL2, but let's take it through its paces around the Singapore Zoo. Zach, are you ready?
Yeah!
Let's do it! All right, so now using this lens on the Sigma FP, this is gonna be a little bit challenging in the sense because this camera is not really designed for sports. It's an electronic shutter, which is fine in brighter conditions, but in terms of its speed and buffering, it's not at the level of, let's say, other cameras. So this is much more of a lifestyle camera, but I'm putting it on here to try it out. Image quality, of course, out of the FPL is fantastic. 60 megapixels, beautiful colors coming out of the Sigma sensor. So, I mean, this is really nice. It does help a bit more with the EVF, I will tell you that, because I try to use the 100 to 400 with the Sigma FP prior without an EVF, And that was challenging to say the least. This does make it a lot easier to use. But it is, as you can see, quite a small camera on the 150 to 600. A little bit different, but still an enjoyable experience, but you just have to really dial in your settings and really fine tune it, because the FPL, in terms of how you set everything up, it does take a little bit of a learning curve. I mean, there's some nice shots, but you know what I mean?
There's 3 of them too.
Also, another thing, if you're wondering here on the SL2 and SL2S, it does recognize the lens, has all the information there, so that's gonna help with your XF data, and I don't know if there's any in-camera corrections happening. Unfortunately, because we're in this shaded area, and because it's a f5 to 6.3, at 600 millimeters at 6.3, I am gonna have to crank up the ISO a little bit. Now, that's not the SL2's strongest attribute, but there is some dedicated noise reduction software like Topaz Denoise and other ones that will do an admirable job of reducing that. And a lot of photographers use it nowadays, especially for wildlife, because as you can see, sometimes you're not gonna have every animal in the optimal lighting condition. So you work with it and you make it work. And there's a lot of beautiful shots out there, and just the images I'm getting straight out of camera right now with the SL2, I'm quite impressed. Unfortunately, the buffering on this camera, I mean, this is not a camera review, but the buffering, you know, if you're gonna be shooting at continuous speeds, it's gonna kick in. So it's something to take note of, go in short bursts. But I mean, it's tempting because when you have a lens like this, you just wanna fire away, you know what I mean? And just not worry about the buffer, but that's not gonna be the case with the SL2. And even with the Sigma FP that I have in my bag, I'll show you that in just a second, you're gonna have to face some of those issues. Now, this is where the FPL works well, is with static animals. It performs well. I mean, honestly, as I mentioned before, this is not a sports camera. We all know that. But if you have an FP and FPL and you want to, you know, get into something a little bit more with longer focal range, it does work pretty good. Just if you're going to chase cheetahs or chase any fast animals, nada. So with that, let's go into Lightroom and let's take a look at images from the Leica SL2 and the Sigma FPL with this Sigma 150 to 600 f5 to 6.3 DGDN. All right, guys, we're now in Lightroom taking a look at images from the Sigma FPL and the Leica SL2 with the Sigma 150 to 600 f5 to 6.3 DGDN lens. Now, we're first going to take a look at images from the Sigma FPL. Now, in terms of the L-mount Alliance, I love the FPL for its color, for its detail. I love how Sigma just really produces some beautiful images out of this camera system. Now, with a 150 to 600, because of the size of this camera, as I mentioned in the review, it may not be the most optimal camera for wildlife, sports photography, or birding for that matter, because of the size, because it's electronic shutter only, that lack of IBIS, I should say. I mean, of course, you have OS inside the lens, but it does help when the camera also has it. So you can get some decent shots out of it. You just have to make sure that your subject is still and you really have your settings dialed in on the FPL. But I was able to get a couple shots that I really liked out of my visit to the zoo, and I'll show you some of those images real quick. First off, here is kind of a profile shot of this lizard at the zoo. I believe it's a monitor lizard. I'm not too sure, but it's a lizard. Anyway, let's look at this real quick. This is pretty tack sharp, I have to say. Not too bad. I'm doing everything handheld, by the way. There's no tripod. This is ISO 250, 600 millimeters f 6.3, 1/320ths of a second. And yeah, the colors out of this are fantastic. I love the colors out of this Sigma FPL. It's beautiful. Now, I did slightly overexpose this image. You can see right here, I actually really overexposed it because I should have had a higher shutter speed on this. My apologies on that. I was going back and forth between two cameras for this review, but because of the dynamic range in the FPL, I'm able to rescue a lot of detail and the highlights. So hats off to Sigma for a fantastic sensor and processor inside of this camera. But again, look at this. The detail's fantastic. The fall off from the head where it's in focus to the back area, it looks really, really good. Let's look at another image here real quick. This is of these tortoises, and I just thought this was really cute. They were just kind of creeping on each other, and then they finally sort of, put their heads next to each other. It was kind of like a romantic moment between tortoises. I have no idea if they liked each other or not, but it was that image. But look at this, really nice. It was sharp, looked good. Yes, I'm at ISO 1600, 150 millimeter in terms of focal length, f5.9, 1/1000th of a second, and this is before edit. and after edit, before edit, and after edit. So I was bringing out some of the detail in the shell area here and in terms of their skin. But yeah, I'm very, very happy with this. And of course, if you want to use any sort of post-processing software, you can enhance the sharpening and reduce the noise as well. Okay, now let's move over to the Leica SL2, because a lot of Leica users out there that are looking for a native L-mount super zoom lens, this is going to be the lens you're going to be shopping for. The price point is fantastic. It's $150 to $600. You don't need to adapt anything like you needed to do previously. So you're really going to get really good at performance. Autofocus works well. Tracking works well. Again, it works as good as the camera does. Now, I'll talk about that throughout some of these images here. But hopefully, I mean, there's supposed to be an update to the SL2 from what I understand. It was supposed to be at the end of July. That was a rumor. Didn't happen. Maybe it'll happen this week that the video is out. Who knows? But let's go back into the image quality with this Sigma lens on the SL2. Now let's look at these white rhinoceros here real quick. And I want to show you an image with really good lighting at ISO 640, 355 millimeters at 5.9, 1/1250th of a second. And this is really tack sharp here, folks. I mean, I'm really focusing in this area, and you can see the scaling, the detail, the wrinkles in the skin. It looks beautiful. Nice separation from what's in focus to the background here. And of course, this has been edited slightly, just slightly in terms of exposure, bringing down the highlights a little bit. And you know, the dynamic range in the SL2 is really good, and I'm happy with what I'm seeing out of this, especially at lower ISO numbers. But let's talk about something a little bit higher. Here's this meerkat here, and I was actually wanted to test this lens against backlight, because you know, this is where you really kind of stress test the lens a little bit more in terms of purple fringing, green fringing, or you know, how does it handle backlight. And this is pretty severe. It was near top of day, and you know, these meerkats were walking out of their little cubby hole area, and I was able to capture one of them. This is at ISO 800, 403 millimeters of 6.3, 1/500th of a second. This has been edited slightly. This is before edit, and here's after edit, before edit, and after edit. Now, edits are a personal preference. You may like or dislike how I edit the image, but I just want to kind of give you an idea of what you can do with it. And I was bringing out the details and the highlights in the fur area here. But as we look at the highlight area here, you're going to see a little bit of blue fringing right there with the hair. But again, this may be more to do with the color of the hair than actually the lens itself. Let's look at before the edit here. And yeah, it does a pretty decent job. I mean, you can actually reduce this even more if I wanted to, but for a quick edit, I'm very, very happy with this. And if I want to reduce the blue, I can do that in post, no issues at all. But again, sharp, detailed, very, very happy with what I'm seeing here. Meerkats are fun to shoot because they're very animated, and when they stand still, they really stand still, so you can really lock on focus. But look at the detail in the eye and the fur area right here. It's fantastic. And this is before edit, after edit, before edit, after edit. I just did minor adjustments because I really didn't need to do much because of the great lighting conditions and the great color coming out of the SL2. ISO 640, 600 millimeters of 6.3, 1/640th of a second. Again, tack sharp. I love the fall off on this. From what's in focus to the background area, it looks really, really good. Sigma is touting this as, you know, a 600 prime or whatever focal length you're at. It's like, it acts like a prime lens. And while I don't have a prime 600 millimeter lens or 500 millimeter lens or 400 to, you know, compare it to, I can say that I was very happy with the performance regardless if it's at 150 or at 600 in terms of how this lens performed. And let's just go over a couple more images. Here's of a lion here. This was a little trickier because the lion was in the shade, and you know, I was battling that, shutter speed, want to get it in focus, and of course ISO. This is at ISO 6400, 600 millimeters f 6.3, 1/400th of a second. And we zoom in on this, tack sharp here in the eye area. You are going to see some noise creeping in around here because of the lower light situation here. Again, this can be fixed in, let's say, Topaz Denoise or another software, whatever you use. I personally use Topaz Denoise. I'm not sponsored by them. I paid for it out of my own pocket, but I'll show you the end result here to give you an idea of what you're able to achieve with this software, with you know, a little bit of editing to really fine tune this image even more. But again, I'm happy with it. The colors out of this line look fantastic. Here's before edit, here's after edit, before edit, and after edit. And Let me just show you one more image here of this red panda. Very interesting animal, very, very cute, but they move around quite fast when they want to move. And I was able to capture one shot in focus here. You are going to see some noise creeping in here because I was trying to push the shadows up a little bit more. As you can see, this was the original shot. And then here's my edit. Again, run this through some noise reduction software. It does clean up quite nicely, but I love the fall off from the fur that's in focus to the background area. It's really, really nice. So again, very happy with this. This was shot at 395 millimeters, ISO 6400, f6.3, 1/1000th of a second. And the reason I was cranking up my shutter speed a little bit more on this is because I wanted to make sure that the animal was sharp. Because, you know, they move around quite fast and, you know, I don't want to push the ISO up even more. If I want to go up to like 8,000 or 10,000, I don't have to worry about it so much, but I wanted to keep it low so I could get a cleaner image. So overall, I mean, you've seen some images throughout this review. The lens performs quite well on the SL2 and the Sigma FPL. Again, ISO will be something that you might have to deal with the SL2, but if you want to see how a more modern sensor renders the Sigma 150 to 600, you can check out my Sony E-mount review with the Alpha 1, so you can see a little bit of a difference there. But I'm happy with this. And for SL2 users out there, SL2S users out there, Lumix S1R, S1, S1H, S5, you know, you've finally got yourself a native super zoom lens that's going to produce some beautiful images at a very attractive price point. Anyway, enough of me talking here. Let's go to my final thoughts on the lens. So my final thoughts on this lens for the L-mount Alliance. I mean, there is no other option out there that's a native L-mount lens at this focal range out there. I mean, from 150 to 600, this is a fantastic lens. It's sharp, it has great rendition. I mean, we saw all the images in Lightroom and throughout this review. It performs beautifully on the SL2 and even here on the Sigma FPL. Now, this camera, I like this camera a lot. Image quality is fantastic, Sigma's colors are great, but it's not really designed to take advantage of a lens like this. You need a camera that has mechanical and electronic shutter, that has more of those classic ergonomics to really help you, balance this lens and shoot with it. Of course, if you're going to shoot still subjects, the FPL is fine. But if you're going to be in, let's say, you're going to do sporting events in artificial lighting situations, because this is only an electronic shutter here, you might face some banding issues or may face some odd rolling shutters. So that you don't want to experience that. So I would recommend it possibly with the SL2, SL2S, Lumix S1R, S1, S1H, S5, you know the drill. But I'm a big fan of this lens, and especially for the price point, this is an amazing bargain. Sigma, I wasn't expecting them to come at this price point. I thought it was going to be in the mid 2000s Singapore dollars, but they have surprised me coming in under 2,000 Singapore dollars for this lens. Yeah, it's a great performer. I highly recommend it. So those are my thoughts on the all-new Sigma 150 to 600 f5 to 6.3 DGDN lens for the L mount. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Is this a lens you're going to pick up? Are you going to pass on it? I want to hear from you guys. Anyway, like always, follow us on Facebook. Subscribe to us here on this channel. Like this video. It helps us out a lot. Stay safe. Take care. And I'll chat to you soon.